Here's a few places you might not want to plan for your next beach vacation.
If you're not looking to disappear, that is.
Or looking to break the law, because these are forbidden islands.
Let's get into it.
Starting off our list today, I'm gonna do it, you guys. It's North Centennial Island, which if you've been with our channel for a while, you've 100% heard of. But what you might not have heard of is that in 2018, an evangelical missionary named John Allen Chau actually made it to the shores of the island, but it did not go well. If you are new here or are unaware of what North Centennial Island is, what it's all about, and why it's banned, here's the rundown. North Centennial is a remote island located in India in the Bay of Bengal, and for the last 60,000 years, a small tribe called the Sentinelese have resided there. The island has been banned since 1956 after the government declared it both dangerous and protected. You see, not only could outside infectious diseases wipe out the entire Sentinelese population, the tribe is known to be incredibly hostile. A hostility demonstrated in 2018 when John Allen Chau decided to disobey the law and visit the island in the hopes to spread the word of God. He paid 2 fishermen to take him as close to the shore as they could, and then he canoed the rest of the way. The next day, those same fishermen witnessed Chau's body being dragged across the sand by the islanders before they buried him. Believe it or not, Chau had actually previously made 2 successful visits pretty close to the island, which he called Satan's last stronghold on earth, to share the words of God, but it seems that by the 3rd visit, the islanders had had enough.
Getting eaten, that's one way to disappear. And there's no better place to be eaten alive than Australia, home to all kinds of dangerous wild animals. And Fraser Island in Queensland is no exception. The beaches are gorgeous, but they aren't patrolled by lifeguards, so good luck if you get caught in one of the dangerous riptides. There are also tons of sharks in the area and box jellyfish, one of the most dangerous jellyfish species in the world. So, swimming here is not recommended. Even on land, you've got crocs and dingoes to deal with. Saltwater crocs in particular are pretty aggressive, and they're not shy about making their presence known in the island's estuaries and waterways. Dingoes may seem cute, I mean they are adorable, but they can get nasty, especially if you mess with them or leave food lying around, so you gotta make sure all your stuff is sealed up. Just take a look at this image of a dingo biting a woman's butt.
Next up, we have Hashima Island in Japan, also known as Battleship Island. The island was first discovered in the 1800s, about 9 miles off the coast of Nagasaki, and in 1887, it was converted into a coal mining facility inhabited by over 5,000 individuals, which was a lot for the tiny island. In fact, at one time, they were considered to be the most densely populated place in the world. It was a booming business for the Japanese all the way up until 1974, when demand for coal dropped due to the rising popularity of petroleum, and the mine was shut down. Quickly, the entire population either moved back to Nagasaki or found somewhere else to go, and Battleship Island was declared a ghost town in both the figurative and literal sense. Many people believe that the Japanese prisoners forced to work on the island after World War II now haunt the island and its many abandoned buildings. For years, not a single soul was to enter the island, but eventually, due to a rise in civilian curiosity, it was opened up to the public for guided tours. So forbidden, maybe, but you still might not want to go.
If you've ever wanted to go out like a Roman in Pompeii, then Wakari or the White Island may be the place for you. It's New Zealand's most active volcano. The island is made entirely of hardened volcanic material that's built up over 150,000 years. The place is highly active. When it's not spewing out molten lava, it's continually releasing volcanic gas. There have been a good number of deaths on the island. There used to be sulfur mining up until the 30s, but 10 miners died when part of the crater wall collapsed, and from 1975 to 2000, the volcano was just continually erupting. There have also been eruptions in 2012, 2016, and a deadly one in 2019. There used to be guided tours of Wakari, which came to an end after this incident. On December 9th of 2019, there was a large eruption. Unfortunately, there were also 47 people on the island at the time. 22 of them were killed, 25 were injured with severe burns. Today, you can only see the island on boat and plane tours, and that is definitely for the best.
Moving on to Poveglia Island in Italy, the small island located between Venice and Lido that was once used as a quarantine center for those infected with the plague. The island is said to have hosted over 160,000 infected individuals who, upon their demise, were either buried in massively overcrowded graves or simply burned due to said overcrowding. There are even reports out there that state that a whopping 50% of the island's soil is actually consistent with literal human remains. And believe it or not, it doesn't actually end there. As in the late 1800s, the island was also used as a mental hospital where it is believed one of the doctors routinely tormented his patients. And if that's not enough, because of all this, it is now believed that the island is extremely haunted, with some going so far as to say it is the most haunted place in the entire world. Reports of ghost sightings and hearing the screams of the deceased in the dead of night are by no means in short supply. And so in 1968, the Italian government decided it wanted absolutely nothing to do with the island, its smell of death, and all of its spooky baggage, and therefore they deemed it both banned and prohibited, forbidden, whatever you want to call it. You can take boat rides around the island, but you're not to step foot on it, and I think that's totally reasonable. It's really creepy. It's basically made of dead people.
Komodo Island in Indonesia gets its name for a pretty obvious reason: all the Komodo dragons. You're not allowed to visit this island alone, but there are guided tours. You gotta be really careful here. Wandering off alone could spell your death, because Komodo dragons are not a lizard you wanna mess with. Along with crocs and gators, they're kind of the closest things we have to real-life dinosaurs. Komodo dragons, they can grow up to 10 feet in length. They have razor-sharp teeth, venomous saliva, and their diet consists of monkeys, boar, deer, goats, really just anything they can get their jaws on, and that includes humans. They're pure predators. Now, they don't attack humans often, but that's mainly because they have enough food to eat already. Between 1974 and 2012, though, there have been about 24 reported attacks on humans in Komodo National Park.
Up next, we have Fort Carroll, an abandoned military man-made island constructed in the 19th century prior to the Civil War. It sits just south of Baltimore, Maryland, in the middle of the Patapsco River, and although it was never finished, it was built as a defensive structure to protect the United States of America's most important ports. It was only halfway complete when the Civil War broke out. The walls were less than 15 feet high out of the planned 30, and only 5 weapons platforms were ready, and only 2 of those were armed. But the army was determined to make use of the island, and so they brought in about 30 cannons and fought from the base until torrential rains drove them away. The fort would be briefly used again in the Spanish War before being restricted from the public in 1958. It was supposed to be turned into a casino, but those plans were squashed, and seeing as it was once a military base, I wouldn't take any chances attempting to trespass. I mean, we all know what happened to that guy who tried to find the M cave in Area 51. I feel like you'll find yourself in one of those where'd he go kind of situations.
The Farallon Islands in California are totally off limits because they have everything: sharks, radioactive waste, shipwrecks. They've earned the nicknames Islands of the Dead and the Devil's Teeth Islands for good reason. From 1946 to 1970, the sea around the islands was used as a dumping ground for radioactive waste. 47,500 containers or so of contaminated lab waste have been dumped in the area. Apparently most of the radiation has decayed by now, but I still wouldn't trust it. Plus, who knows what all that material did to the marine life. There have been a number of shipwrecks here over the years as well, dating back to 1921 when a US Navy tugboat disappeared along with all 56 crew on board. It was found in 2009 in the waters of the Farallon Islands. In 1941, a US Coast Guard flying boat struck part of the southeast Farallon Island, causing the aircraft to burst into flames and all 3 crew on board dying. The latest accident was in 2012 when a yacht capsized, killing 5 of the 8 passengers on board. So this is a place you'd want to look at from a distance, perhaps.
Next up, we have Poison Gas Island, also known as Rabbit Island. In 1925, after the signing of the Geneva Protocol banning chemical warfare worldwide, Japan became very weary about the idea that both the United States and Europe had been secretly continuing to produce chemical weapons behind their back. In order to protect themselves, Japan took claim of a small isolated island, which was then removed from the maps created in the area. The Japanese government then went on to set up a chemical weapons facility on the island, manned by laborers who were actually unaware of what they were producing. Workers spent hours on end, for days on end, for weeks on end, producing mustard gas and tear gas without taking any of the necessary precautionary measures, which led to a whole bunch of the workers later suffering from toxic exposure-related illnesses. The island was shut down in 1929, during which time all documents mentioning the weapons plant were destroyed, and all of the leftover gas was either dumped or buried around the island. While the island was once, of course, strictly banned to the public because of the fact that you could get poisoned by chemical weapons, and is now reopened for tours at the Okashima Poisonous Gas Museum, and it's also known for its massive wild rabbit population, which is super random. No one really knows why.
Vozrozhdeniya is in Uzbekistan isn't technically an island anymore. The Aral Sea started drying up, turning Vozrozhdeniya into a peninsula, which is pretty bad considering how contaminated it is. Back in the day, it was used as a testing ground for biological weapons by the Soviet Union. This went on from 1936 to about 1992. The place is littered with old labs and testing sites where all sorts of nasty stuff was cooked up. We're talking about diseases like anthrax, smallpox, and the plague being unleashed on innocent animals for so-called research purposes. And as you can imagine, when you mess around with that kind of stuff, things tend to get messy. There were accidental outbreaks, including an outbreak of anthrax which killed 105 people. So contamination is a big issue here. The soil and water are probably crawling with all sorts of pathogens and toxins from decades of bioweapons testing. Not exactly the kind of place you'd want to go for a picnic. There you have it, some scary islands. They're not all forbidden, we know. I know there's gonna be someone in the comments, that's not technically forbidden. Unsubscribing. No, all right?
Come on, guys.
So they're dangerous.
Yeah.
They're dangerous islands.
Yeah.
Don't go there anyway.
You could disappear in your bathroom. So,
That's true too.
you know, the sentiment stands.
But yeah, I've been your host, James.
I've been your host, Hannah.
We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, we will. Don't disappear.
And we're kicking off the list with Patak Island Prison in Russia. So this prison is known for its incredibly harsh conditions and isolation from the mainland. Yeah, stuck on an island prison. That's bad. Bad for the prisoners, anyway. Just makes it a little harder to escape. You know, so I guess good for everyone else. This place has a nickname though that would probably send a shiver up your spine if you were going there, and not just because you'd be in Russia. It's often referred to as the Alcatraz of Russia, which is not a compliment. If you refer to something or someone as the Alcatraz of whatever, you are insulting that person or place. Don't do that. Be nice. But the name does fit for this particular location. This island hellhole holds some of the most dangerous criminals in Russia. And they spend 22 and a half hours of the day cooped up in their cells. 22 out of 24 hours. That's a fair chunk of the day. Oh, and if prisoners happen to break any of the strict rules in place, they're sent to a small dark room in total isolation for up to 15 days straight. That's just the tip of the iceberg, too. Don't forget to tap that subscribe button if you are enjoying our content. We have plenty more coming your way on the daily. Next up on the list is what is often referred to as the most dangerous prison in the United States, ADX Florence. It was built back in 1994 and is what is known as a supermax prison. The place houses some of the biggest and baddest criminals in the country, ones that pose a severe threat of violence to staff and other inmates, and just need extra security, more than you'd get in even a maximum security prison. But how do you get more extreme than maximum security? Maximum means like this is it, you've reached the wall, you're at the max. Apparently you just add super to the title. It's not just maximum, super maximum. One step above that, I guess, would be mega maximum prison, which doesn't exist yet. I imagine that's when we'll start putting people in with actual superpowers. Prisoners here are under watch though 24/7 and spend almost the entirety of their day in single cells. Some prisoners here are even barred from speaking privately with their own lawyers or family members, because I guess that's just how dangerous they are. They could just talk their way out of prison. Next up, we have a political prison camp infamous for its extreme human rights abuses, Camp 22 in North Korea. Not only would you never want to visit this place in case you did something wrong and ended up actually being detained yourself, but it's also in North Korea, so good luck even getting into the country. I mean, yeah, what can I say? It's a prison camp. Only time camp is good in a sentence, I'm learning, is when it has the word summer right before it. Pretty much any other kind of camp is not where you want to be. And based on the little information that's gotten out about this place, it sounds like hell. And remember, this is North Korea, so there's a lot kept under wraps. If the stuff I'm talking about here sounds bad, you know there are things going on that are 10 times worse in there. So a former prison guard actually talked about the state he'd seen some of the prisoners in, and it's pretty horrific. Not sure how much detail we can really get into here, but according to him, about 30% of the prisoners had life-altering deformities due to all the mistreatment. Missing ears, faces covered in cuts and bruises. Many were underfed, just completely inhumane. The saddest part is, though, not even really surprising. This is just what comes along with living under a totalitarian regime. Next up, we have Attica Correctional Facility. This prison is in Attica, New York, and became famous for the 1971 Attica prison riot. The facility was built in the 30s, and by the 70s, it had become severely overcrowded with harsh living conditions. The breaking point came in September of 1971, when prisoners revolted, protesting against the inhumane treatment by prison staff and generally poor living conditions. The riot lasted for 4 days, and it turned violent. In the end, the New York State Police were called in to regain control. The aftermath was brutal. During the retaking of the prison, law enforcement officers shot both inmates and hostages accidentally, and total 43 people lost their lives. 10 hostages and 33 inmates. Many others were also injured. Attica became a symbol of prison brutality and sparked debates about the treatment of prisoners. And the incident led to some changes in prison policies, but it also exposed deep-rooted issues in the US prison system. It's certainly not as dangerous now as many of the other prisons on this list, but the history of the place has definitely left an impression. Next, we head to Syria to explore Tadmor prison without actually going there. So, the wonders of the internet. This place is infamous for its brutal treatment of prisoners. Definitely has a grim reputation. Built in the 1960s, it's located in the desert near Palermo. The prison became rather infamous because of how bad its inmates were treated. Political prisoners in particular. There was overcrowding, extreme abuse. In 1980, a horrific event unfolded known as the Tadmor Prison Massacre. The Syrian government cracked down on prisoners, resulting in the deaths of hundreds, maybe even thousands. The exact number is still a bit unclear because of the secretive nature of the Syrian regime. A paramilitary force known as the Defense Brigade entered the prison at dawn and attacked prisoners in their cells. After the massacre, the prison continued to be a symbol of terror. In 2001, the Syrian government officially closed Tadmor, but reports suggest that parts of the facility were still in use for detaining political prisoners. Next up, we have Bang Kwang Central Prison in Thailand. So this place is known for its very strict conditions. It's often ironically referred to as the Bangkok Hilton. This is a high security prison in Nonthaburi, Thailand. It's one of the most notorious prisons in the country. To put it plainly, Bang Kwang has a reputation for being pretty tough. It houses a mix of inmates, from common criminals to those on death row, serving long sentences or facing severe penalties. The conditions inside are often very harsh, with overcrowding being a persistent issue. Famously, For the first 3 months of an inmate's sentence, they are chained to leg irons, and those awaiting death row used to be welded into them permanently, but that practice has since been banned. Bangkwang is also famous for its implementation, of course, of the death penalty. Thailand has very strict special substances laws, and these types of offenses can result in very severe punishments, including death. La Sante Prison. This is a notorious French prison known for its overcrowded and harsh conditions. It's a bit of a redundant. I've never heard of overcrowding being a good thing. So from now on, if I say overcrowded, it's bad. It's bad. In straightforward terms, La Sante has gained a reputation for being a tough place. Constructed in the 19th century, it has faced issues related to its aging infrastructure and insufficient space for its inmates. Overcrowding has been persistent, leading to concerns about the well-being of these prisoners. The prison has been criticized for its tough disciplinary measures as well, and reports of violence among inmates is not uncommon. Inmates have sometimes protested against these conditions, drawing attention to the challenges they face inside the facility, but the harsh environment mixed with the psychological toll of incarceration has also led to a number of inmates taking their own lives. Now, efforts have apparently been made to address some of these problems, including renovations and updates to the prison, but I probably wouldn't be adding this to my list of places to check out if I were visiting France. Want to see some dark stuff? Go to the Paris catacombs or something. The dead don't scare me nearly as much as the living. Next up is Carandiru Penitentiary in Brazil. Now, this place actually closed in 2002, but its history of violence and overcrowding made it absolutely infamous. Located in Sao Paulo, it has a dark and notorious history that reached its peak with a very tragic event that became known as the Carandiru Massacre. It was built in 1956. The prison became one of the largest in Latin America, designed to house around 3,000 inmates, but it often held more than double that number. And anytime you have overcrowding on that kind of scale, tension and violence is almost unavoidable. On October 2nd of 1992, a riot erupted. In response, the police were called in to regain control, but the situation very quickly spiraled out of control, resulting in what is now known as the aforementioned Carandiru Massacre. Military police entered the prison, and in the ensuing chaos, 111 inmates lost their lives, most of them unarmed and in their cells. The prison was eventually closed in 2002, and the remaining inmates were transferred to other facilities. Taking the next spot on list is Black Beach in Equatorial Guinea. This is said to be one of Africa's most notorious prisons. Yes, out of the entire continent. That's saying a lot. The prison was built during the Spanish colonial rule in the 1940s. Initially, it mostly held petty criminals, but by 1968, with the independence of the country, it started housing political prisoners as well, many of whom died in the prison. Wonder how. The biggest problem with this place is neglect. Prisoners are often denied basic amenities like food and healthcare. Many prisoners are also violently tormented. And we're gonna finish things off with Urumqi number 3 detention center in Dabancheng, China. This is the largest detention center, not only in China, but possibly the entire world. If you think some of the inmates numbers I've mentioned so far are a lot, this place dwarfs them all. This detention center holds about 10,000 inmates or more if they were really jammed in there, like most of the prisons on this list. That's just an estimate based on satellite imagery and from what little reporters have seen from the inside. Chinese authorities keep a lot of stuff hush-hush, including the exact number of inmates currently housed there. But the place is 220 acres, twice the size of Vatican City. That sounds like a dystopian sci-fi movie kind of prison. The prison also holds what are referred to as vocational training centers, which have been described by former prisoners as brutal internment camps. And there's a specific group that is being targeted the worst, an ethnic minority in China called the Uyghurs, who are basically being thrust into these camps to do forced labor, which the government, of course, denies.
First up, we have Renacimiento in Acapulco, Mexico. For years now, Acapulco has been listed as one of the most dangerous cities in Mexico, with more people losing their lives there than almost any other city in the country. And while the city was once home to Hollywood stars, nowadays, particularly in Renacimiento, the streets are filled with gang graffiti, empty offices, and burned down stalls. The area has been described as being run by a monster with 100 heads, in reference to the various cartels who operate in the area, and have no qualms about ending the lives of anybody who does anything even remotely out of line. In 2023, Acapulco as a whole averaged 111 homicides per 100,000 residents, if you want numbers to fully grasp how dangerous the area is. In Acapulco, the most life-threatening position also isn't one you'd think of. It's a taxi driver. More than 130 cabbies were slain in 2016, and with most of them being cartel controlled, they don't have any other option but to continue driving. And the sad truth is if they don't come up with enough money, they'll lose their life. Sometimes, even if they do, they won't survive. Now that is truly a scary place to call home.
So next on our list is the terrifying Freeport area of Monrovia, Liberia. So the West African nation has a pretty rocky past to say the least. It was one of the few countries that was colonized by America following the freeing of the slaves, but sadly the influx of new citizens caused some serious problems for the country. Those who traveled from America ended up bringing the twisted Western ideologies with them and enslaved the local citizens of Liberia. The country remained in a state of disarray for decades, and while some people did try to save it from the criminals who were running it, it only ended up making things worse. A massive war broke out in the country and violent generals started to take over. All the fighting and violence has completely destroyed the country and has made it one of the most impoverished countries on earth. The Freeport area of the capital city of Monrovia is completely littered with criminals, narcotics, and pollution. The nearby beaches are piled high with garbage, many people are selling narcotics to get by, and the threat of violent attacks persists 24/7. The most shocking reports to emerge from the country though are that some people have resorted to cannibalism for food. While soldiers would eat the generals they had eliminated in the heart of battle, practice has sadly been passed down to others, and it's just one of the many reasons why Monrovia's Freeport is one of the most dangerous places on earth.
Also known as the near South Side neighborhood, Peabody Darts Web is an area in St. Louis, Missouri that police have listed as the most dangerous in Missouri. Not only that, it's one of the most dangerous in the entirety of the United States. Crime rates in the area are 60% higher than the rest of St. Louis, and the violent crime rate, 1,189% higher than the national average. The sad reality is that the situation is only becoming more difficult for those living there, with crime rates increasing year by year. In fact, you have a 1 in 8 chance of being the victim of a crime by simply being in the area. The neighborhood is only home to around 2,500 people, and yet continues year by year to top lists in terms of homicides and violent crimes per area. It just shows that clearly life is cheap in the neighborhood, which is just a 7-minute drive from the famous Gateway Arch, according to Google Maps. As a whole, St. Louis is the most dangerous city in the entire United States, and as long as Peabody Darst Web continues to be a dangerous place to live, it'll earn its place atop that list.
There are a lot of places in Colombia's capital city of Bogota that are quite beautiful. There are also plenty of neighborhoods that you should stay far away from. One of the most infamous areas of the South American sea that is known for its out-of-control crime rate is the Ciudad Bolivar locality. Just from taking one look at this neighborhood, you can already tell that it is in a terrible state. Most people who live in Bolivar are well below the poverty line and cannot afford their own homes, so they are forced to build their own using whatever materials they can find. The actual purpose-built houses that can be found here have been left in shambles as no one can afford to maintain them. Because there are no jobs in the area and most people cannot even afford to pay for transit to take them to jobs, gang activity is the main source of income in Bolivar. It is not uncommon to find bodies lying in the unpaved streets of this neighborhood, as local police and government officials have seemingly decided that the area is beyond the point of repair. Some of the citizens of the area are recruited for military purposes, but any income they might generate will likely be stolen from the local gangs, ensuring that Bolivar remains one of the most impoverished and dangerous neighborhoods in all of Colombia.
I mentioned the second highest crime rate in the United States earlier, but the highest goes to the other St. Louis, that being East St. Louis in Illinois. With the area's population declining from over 80,000 in the 1950s to fewer than 20,000 today, the dangerous reputation of the area has led to most of the residents getting the same idea, packing up and leaving. For the around 18,000 people who still call the area home, they have to deal with heavy industry closures and a local government that's in severe debt. The city has even developed areas of urban prairie, where empty buildings have been torn down and whole blocks have been reclaimed by the surrounding vegetation. As you might expect, truck stops and half-rural businesses are now clustered around some of the worst areas. But the area has deep-rooted racial tensions dating back from the civil rights era, with some of the people influenced by their surroundings, including legends like Miles Davis and Ike and Tina Turner. Those three were a big part of the thriving blues and jazz scene in the 1950s, but almost all of that incredible musical history has been covered by the area's horrific crime rate, and the fact that almost 35% of people living there are well below the poverty line.
The once great city of New Orleans has seen a drastic and unfortunate change in recent years. What was once a fantastic spot for tourists to party and enjoy some nightlife has quickly turned into one of the most violent cities in all of America, and the crime has even started to seep into the tourist areas. One of the main areas where the gangs and crime of New Orleans originates is the terrifying Pines Village. Now, sadly, a large portion of the area was wiped out by the devastating effects of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, but the neighborhood has not been able to bounce back since the storm completely destroyed it. Many of the homes have been left in an apocalyptic state, and the ones that are abandoned have turned into hubs for gangs who are selling narcotics. The crime rate in the area is so bad that it is 469% above the national average and 289% above the state average. The only people who are willing to travel into the heart of the terrifying neighborhood these days are those who are looking to purchase their illegal substances as well as gang members. It seems like it is almost a guarantee that one person will lose their life to violence every day in Pines Village, and sadly, it is showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon.
There's no place in Costa Rica where you're more likely to be pickpocketed than in the Zona Roja district of San Jose. The area translates to red zone, and the substance dealing, robberies, assaults, and street fights to the maximum occur in the red zone, which is a refuge for criminals who operate non-stop, regardless of whether it is day or night. If you visit as a foreigner, you're even more at risk, as pickpockets and thieves in the area will do anything in their power to distract you and take anything of value from your person, and they'll go to extreme measures in the process. This area in San Jose is definitely one that you want to avoid when visiting the area, as while there are plenty of touristy areas in San Jose where locals are much more welcoming, you're much more likely to have a not so pleasant time if you find yourself in Zona Roja. Thousands of tourists who take a wrong turn or end up in the wrong area end up mugged every year in the area. And with crime rampant as it is, people aren't afraid to do it at any time, during the night, or as we've seen in multiple cases, in broad daylight.
The Camelicon area of San Pedro Sula, Honduras is one of the most notorious neighborhoods for gang activity in all of Central America. That is because two of the most infamous crime organizations in the world, MS-13 and MS-18, control a vast portion of the city's dangerous neighborhood. These gangs will constantly fight over territory and have turned the entire city into one of the most dangerous places on the planet. The fall of the city all started back in 2004 after a terrible incident occurred where gang members took the lives of 28 innocent people on a tour bus. This caused a mass exodus from the heart of the city and resulted in the gangs becoming the dominant force in the area. Narcotics dealers and hitmen can be found all over the streets of this terrible place, and the barbed wire fences and crumbling buildings show that Camelicon is a shell of its former self. The MS-13 and MS-18 have become so big that they have even expanded their territories to neighboring Central American countries like El Salvador and are continuing to cause problems for anyone they meet. In fact, one of the most notorious leaders of MS-13, Elmer Canales Rivera, was even indicted in the United States for orchestrating hundreds of killings and teaching his fellow gang members to use rocket launchers and other deadly weapons.
Cité Soleil has had it incredibly tough, as after the 2010 earthquake devastated most of Haiti, crime rose throughout the country, particularly in their capital city of Port-au-Prince. But of all the places in Port-au-Prince, Cité Soleil is the one where life is the hardest. Arguably the largest slum in the entirety of the Western Hemisphere, Cité Soleil suffers from massive unemployment, a sewage system that barely does its job, frequent power outages, and the constant problem of gang violence along with other crimes. Poverty is extremely rampant, and many residents are forced to steal in order to survive, further adding on to their horrible crime index. In fact, the area is so poor that one local delicacy is the mud cake, which is a biscuit made of clay and cooking oil. While the area wasn't exactly heaven on earth pre-earthquake, not only did it destroy people's entire lives, it had the unfortunate result of freeing tons of prisoners, as many violent offenders were released due to the damage. Police in the area have gone as far as to ask locals to take matters into their own hands, which doesn't seem like assuring words to me. And with the crime rate only escalating year by year, it seems like they'll have less and less ability to steer the area in the right direction. It's really a shame because Haiti has been through so much, and it's horrible to see a country absolutely devastated like they are.
So this one might be a bit of a surprise to some people, but the Quigley area of Albuquerque, New Mexico has evolved into one of the worst neighborhoods in all of America. With the growing rate of gangsters flowing into the state of New Mexico, it appears that many of them have chosen Quigley as their base of operations for conducting their shady businesses. While the American government is trying to clamp down on the crime that is unfolding in the area, it appears that it is only getting worse. Citizens of Quigley are 5 times more likely to be assaulted than anywhere else in America, and this can be attributed to random muggings and carjackings from local gangsters. It is one of the most lively areas for 911 calls, and the overall violent crime sits around 500% above the American national average. Most of the problems that occur in Quigley are a direct result of narcotics dealers in the area, but the growing concern is that these terrible crimes will start to pour into the rest of Albuquerque. Quigley's violent crime hit an astonishing 1,396% high between 2020 and 2021, which is almost impossible to comprehend. This has basically made the entire area a no-fly zone for anyone who lives in or visits Albuquerque, and Quigley is rapidly becoming one of the deadliest neighborhoods in all of America.
At number 10 is the Axis Powers Base. In the late 1930s, the fascist party from World War II stirred up quite a bit of intrigue with their Arctic escapades. But what was really going on? Well, it all started with a German expedition from December 1938 to April 1939 on the ship MS Schwabenland. Their mission was to claim a slice of Antarctica known today as Dronning Maud Land. That's gonna come up multiple times throughout this video, so remember that. On paper, their main motivation of this expedition was to protect the German whaling industry. Or so they claimed. The Schwabenland was packing some cool gear like a steam catapult and 2 Dornier wall flying boats. These babies were used to snap pics of a whopping 600,000 square kilometers of the frozen landscape. They dropped a bunch of aluminum flags from the plane and left some on foot expeditions, but none of these flags have ever been seen again. The Germans swooped in and officially claimed the surveyed land as New Schwabenland in August of 1939, but then World War II came along and spoiled their base building plans. Or so they claim. The German claim to this slice of Antarctica was dropped in 1945, and there's no hard evidence of them doing much else in Antarctica during World War II at this time. Or so they claimed. At number 9 is the British Operation Tarabin. Tarabin? I don't know. Antarctica might seem like the last place you would expect to see wartime secrets, but during World War II, Britain had some hidden plans on ice. While the Germans weren't chilling out there, allegedly, Britain was in fact making moves in Antarctica. They staked their claim in Antarctica to fend off Argentina and Chile's claims, both of whom were buddy-buddy with Germany. In 1944, Operation Tarabin kicked off, where the British occupied their slice of the Antarctic pie. They said it was about hunting down German ships, but it was more than that. They set up a secret base in frozen desolation, and these bases weren't bustling metropolises either. They were small manned outposts, but they weren't just sipping on hot cocoa out there. They gathered important intel and conducted scientific research. After the war, the chill research vibe continued, evolving into the British Antarctic Survey. Now, with both the Allies and the Axis powers holding a stake in Antarctic land, it was only a matter of time before this Cold War got freezer burn. But before I get into this secret Antarctic battle, if you're enjoying this video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Modenheim 1. It's often rumored that during Operation Tabarin, the Brits set up a base, Modenheim 1, in Dronning Maud Land during the World War II to keep an eye on the supposed Axis base. But conveniently, there are no public records to prove of Modenheim 1's existence. Now, the fascists allegedly attacked Modenheim 1 in July of 1945, followed by SAS-led retaliatory missions from October to December of the same year. But for as fantastic as this Antarctic covert ops story is, there's not a lot to back it up. You see, on paper, Operation Tarabin wasn't about secret war. wars, it aimed at a British scientific presence in the British-claimed sector of Antarctica. Plus, there's no indication of SAS presence in Antarctica during the war, so the tales of the hidden battle and mystery bases are mostly just myths, my friends. Antarctica was more about scientific exploration than covert ops during those times. Or so they claim. At number 7 is Operation High Jump in 1946 to 47, which saw the USA sending the largest crew ever to Antarctica, over 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. Now, the official purpose was, in fact, a military one, all about preparing for cold weather warfare. But there are rumors that suggest that there was something more covert at play. The conspiracy theorists claim that Operation High Jump's real mission was to destroy the aforementioned secret Axis powers in Drawning Mudland. The truth is, High Jump was primarily a military exercise, not a cloak and dagger mission. It was well documented in the press, as the expedition was accompanied by journalists, and official reports were released. While it might have been classified as confidential, it was never really a secret. No flying saucers chased them away, it was just the unpredictability of harsh Antarctic conditions that ended their mission early. Or so they claim. At number 6, Operation Argus Nuclear Bombs. So there were a lot of talk about these supposed secret bases in Antarctica, but let's delve into some facts here. You see, back in 1958, the US conducted 3 nuclear explosions during Operation Argus over the South Atlantic, not directly over Antarctica. These were high-altitude tests aimed at potentially disrupting radar, radio, and electronics of satellites and missiles during the Cold War. Now, the whole idea that these bases were meant to destroy the fascist bases in Drawning Mad is just a narrative not supported by evidence. In fact, if these nukes had gone off near Antarctica, the radioactive fallout would have shown up in ice from across the region, but no such peaks of radioisotopes have ever been found in those ice cores. Or so they claim. Moreover, 1958 was the International Geophysical Year, with international corporations and scientists from various countries in the region, making it highly unlikely that such nuclear tests would have gone unnoticed. At number 5, the Mustache Man flees to Antarctica. We all know which one. We all heard theories about how Germany's fascist leader secretly escaped his fate and lives on to this very day, but the details behind the story are shrouded in mystery. But there's one proposed method of escape with some circumstantial evidence to back it up. The tale involving U-boats, Argentina, and the frozen expanse of Antarctica. The U-530 and the U-977, 2 German U-boats, arrived in Argentina after World War II, sparking rumors of a clandestine escape mission. One of these Argentinian exiles claimed that these U-boats ferried high-ranking fascists, including the Mustached Man himself, to Patagonia or Antarctica. He even went as far as to suggest the existence of an Axis base in Antarctica called New Berchtesgaden. The problem is that no one had mentioned this base before, or the alleged convoy, before this individual's claims. Interrogation reports reveal that the U-530 was near New York when Germany surrendered, and the U-977 was off the coast of Norway. The journeys to Argentina, although slow and cautious, align with the time required for their separate voyages. Moreover, the idea that these U-boats travel to Antarctica in the dead of winter just defies logic. Winter storms, thick ice, and extreme temperatures make such a voyage nearly impossible. No evidence supports the existence of an Antarctic fascist base or a secret convoy. Or at least, that's what they want you to believe. At number 4, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. According to whistleblower Corey Goode, or Goad, I don't know, there's a buried ancient alien civilization beneath 2 miles of ice, and it's been hidden from us for decades. This isn't some sci-fi fantasy, it's based on Goad's first-hand experience as a whistleblower from a secret space program. Allegedly. The story goes back to the 1939 Arctic German expedition. The ancient beings he refers to, called the pre-Adamites, were giants with elongated skulls, and their technology and remnants have allegedly been removed from the site, but only a select few knows what else was discovered. The timing of this revelation is quite interesting, as it might serve as a distraction from explosive global events, including allegations of trafficking among the elite. I don't know how that ties in, but okay. At number 3 on the list is Admiral Byrd's Crystal City. The esteemed U.S. naval officer and explorer Admiral Richard Byrd was one of the first pilots to fly over both poles, who actually organized Operation High Jump himself, which, as I said, was the largest expedition to ever travel to Antarctica, with all kinds of ships, aircraft, and crew, in order to scout out locations for potential military bases. But during his explorations, Admiral Byrd allegedly came upon something highly unexpected. The following comes from not a public account, but from his own diary, which was discovered by his son after Bird's passing, in which he recounts an extraordinary story. Upon encountering a large cave in the South Pole, through which he could easily fly his plane, Bird steers his plane into an opening and flew under the earth. And as he flew within the massive cave, he encroaches upon an incredibly temperate and lush environment, not something you would expect in the South Pole. But that's just the beginning. He tells of how he sees a shimmering rainbow city made of crystal, and suddenly he loses autonomy of his plane as flying disc-shaped objects lead his plane to the ground, whereupon he's escorted to a being which he refers to as the Master in his diary, who tells Bird that this alien species is massively disappointed with nuclear weapons and how they've recently destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, seeming to be really concerned with what's going on at the surface, telling Bird that he hopes humanity will ultimately stop the use of atomic weapons. At number 2 is the Antarctic Pyramids. In 2016, rumors of a pyramid-like mountain circulated the internet, capturing the imaginations of many. Could it be the creation of an ancient civilization, or perhaps, cue the dramatic pause, evidence of extraterrestrial intervention? Whoa. The square-based pyramid is perched in the Ellsworth Range, standing around 4,000 feet tall. It's like 10 times the size of the pyramids of Giza. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, or should I say the tip of the mountain? Reports of plant and bacterial life dating back eons have also come to light, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, prehistoric, or should I say pre-human society once graced this frigid expanse, crafting not only pyramids, but also tending to vegetation. Bam! Proof of ancient aliens, or just a neat geological formation. I'll let you guys decide in the comments. At number 1 is the alien base. If this last story is to be believed, there's allegedly a secret alien base with advanced and unconventional weapons hidden in the icy waters of the Antarctic. According to a video uploaded by UFO hunters, a mysterious anomaly about 180 kilometers off the coast of Antarctica has been spotted. They speculate that it's not just some kind of hangar for a spaceship, but that actual aliens might be residing there too. Now this may veer a little bit more towards the conspiracy side rather than the good old urban legend, but hey, it's all in good fun. Some believers are advocating for an exploration to confirm the existence of these aliens, while others voice their concerns about potentially sparking an intergalactic war if we're not too careful. So whatever it is, let's just hope we tread carefully at this time.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Oradour-sur-Glane in France. Oradour-sur-Glane in France stands as a poignant and stark reminder of the atrocities of World War II. On June 10th, 1944, this small village was the scene of a horrific historical event where 642 residents had their lives taken by the Waffen-SS. In the aftermath, Charles de Gaulle, the then leader of France, decreed that the village should be left untouched as a memorial to the cruelty of the occupation and the suffering it inflicted. Today, the ruins of the town are preserved just as they were left in the wake of the atrocity. Burnt out cars, crumbling buildings, and the remnants of everyday life abruptly halted offer a somber window into the past. As visitors walk through the desolate streets, they encounter an eerie silence interrupted only by the rustling of leaves and the somber echoes of history. In our number 9 spot today, we have Varosha, Cyprus. Varosha, a district of Famagusta. Sure, that's a nice Famagusta. I like that word. Varosha, a district of Famagusta in Cyprus, stands as a stark reminder of the volatility of human conflict and the fleeting nature of luxury. In its heyday, Varosha was the epitome of glamour and In its heyday, Varosha was the epitome of glamour and affluence, attracting celebrities and socialites to its pristine beaches and luxurious hotels. Known for its sparkling blue waters and bustling nightlife, it was the jewel of the Mediterranean. However, this vibrant paradise was abruptly halted in 1974 when the Turkish invasion of Cyprus led to the area's rapid evacuation. Since then, Varosha has been a fenced-off ghost town trapped in time. Nature has begun reclaiming the once opulent buildings, with vines enveloping crumbling facades and sea turtles nesting on the deserted beaches. Streets that once echoed with the laughter of tourists now lie silent, with possessions left as they were in a rush to escape. This eerie, abandoned landscape, visible yet untouchable behind barbed wire, serves as a haunting testament to the city's turbulent past, a ghostly relic of its former glory that continues to captivate the imagination of the world. In our number 8 spot today, we have Dalal, Ethiopia. Dalal, located in the Danakil Depression of northern Ethiopia, presents one of the most otherworldly landscapes on Earth. Renowned for its extreme conditions, this area is a cauldron of searing heat, where temperatures often soar above 45 degrees Celsius, or 113 degrees Fahrenheit for my American friends, making it one of the hottest inhabited places on the planet. The terrain here is a kaleidoscope of bright colors created by sulfur, potash, and other minerals deposited by volcanic activity. Its bubbling hot springs, acidic pools, and gas geysers create a mesmerizing yet menacing tableau, resembling more an alien planet than a place on Earth. While its unearthly beauty attracts scientists and the most intrepid of travelers, Dalal's extreme environment poses significant risks. The toxic gases, such as hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide, coupled with the blistering heat and corrosive waters, make this a perilous destination. Visitors need to be extremely cautious and are advised to explore this inhospitable yet fascinating landscape only with experienced guides and proper preparation. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Mansell Sea Forts in the United Kingdom. Off the coast of southeast England, the Mansell Sea Forts present a mysterious sight, emerging like rusty sentinels from the waters of the North Sea. Constructed during World War II, these imposing structures were part of Britain's coastal defenses, designed as offshore armed towers to deter and defend against German air raids. Their formidable and somewhat alien-like appearance is a reminder of the ingenuity and desperation of wartime engineering. Despite their initial role in the war, these forts were decommissioned in the 1950s, leaving them to the mercy of the elements. Now they stand abandoned yet majestic, and a haunting legacy of the past. Eroded by time and the tide, these forts have become an eerie, almost dystopian landmark. Almost at our halfway mark at number 6, we have Gary, Indiana in the United States. Alright, I wasn't really expecting to put Gary on this list, but little did I know, Gary, Indiana was once a booming industrial city, but now it has become a symbol of urban decay in the United States. Known for its high crime rates and significant economic decline, Gary's story is one of stark contrasts. During the mid-20th century, it was a thriving steel town, attracting workers with the promise of prosperous jobs and a bustling community life. However, as the steel industry declined and jobs disappeared, the city faced a harsh reality. Today, its landscape is marked by abandoned buildings and desolate streets, serving as a reminder of its former glory. The empty factories and theaters, which once symbolized the city's economic strength and cultural richness, now stand in silent testament to the complex challenges facing post-industrial American cities. Despite these struggles, there is a resilient spirit among the residents who remain, many of whom are dedicated to revitalizing and reclaiming the city's legacy. Gary's story is not just one of loss and decline, but also of resilience and the ongoing struggle of a community striving to redefine itself in the face of daunting challenges. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Humberstone and Santa Laura Saltpeter Works in Chile. In the vast arid expanse of the Atacama Desert in Chile, the ghost towns of Humberstone and Santa Laura stand as silent witnesses to a bygone era. These towns were once bustling centers of the saltpeter mining industry, which played a crucial role in Chile's economy from the late 19th to the mid-20th century. Saltpeter, or sodium nitrate, was a vital ingredient in fertilizers and explosives, drawing workers from Chile, Peru, and Bolivia. The towns thrived, complete with residential areas, schools, theaters, social clubs, and even swimming pools, embodying a unique social and cultural community life. However, with the advent of synthetic alternatives in the 1930s, the demand for natural saltpeter declined sharply. By the 1960s, these mining towns were left abandoned, their once lively streets and buildings now empty and exposed to the harsh desert conditions. Today, as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Humberstone and Santa Laura are preserved as open-air museums. They offer a haunting yet fascinating glimpse into the past. With the machinery, visitors can walk through these ghost towns, experiencing the eerie stillness and contemplating the transient nature of industrial booms and the communities they leave behind. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Bielitz-Hellstatten Hospital in Germany. Located in the vicinity of Berlin, the Bielitz-Hellstatten Hospital stands as a haunting testament to history's darker chapters. This sprawling sanatorium complex, once a beacon of medical innovation and healing, harbors a past shadowed by the turmoil of war and suffering. Originally built at the turn of the 20th century, it played a pivotal role as a military hospital during both world wars. It was here that countless soldiers, including a young he who shall not be named during World War I actually, were treated for their injuries. However, the fall of the Berlin Wall marked the beginning of the hospital's descent into desolation. Today, the hospital lies abandoned, its once bustling halls and surgical wards now home to nothing but the echoes of its past. The peeling paint, crumbling facades, and corridors overtaken by nature make it a magnet for urban explorers and ghost hunters drawn by the eerie atmosphere and the tales of hauntings that linger within its walls. This architectural relic, shrouded in mystery, continues to captivate the imagination of those who dare to tread its forgotten paths, offering a chilling glimpse into the past. In our number 3 spot today, we have Shanxi in Taiwan. Shanxi in Taiwan presents a uniquely haunting spectacle with its abandoned pod-shaped homes, which were once envisioned as the future of luxury living. Designed as a futuristic resort in the 1980s, these UFO-like structures were aimed at attracting wealthy vacationers seeking a very unique getaway experience. However, the project was plagued with financial difficulties and tragic accidents during construction, leading to its abandonment. The mysterious circumstances around these events have led to numerous urban legends and ghost stories, contributing to the very eerie atmosphere. The pods, once a symbol of modern times and luxury, now stand as decaying relics overtaken by nature. Surrounded by overgrown foliage, they create a surreal landscape that seems frozen in time. In our number 2 spot today, we have Iquitos in Peru. Deep in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, the city of Iquitos in Peru stands as a testament to isolation and the indomitable spirit of nature. Accessible only by river or air, this remote metropolis is enveloped by lush, dense jungle of the Amazon, making it a place where the modern and the wild coexist. The journey to Iquitos itself is an adventure involving either a flight over endless green canopies or a lengthy, winding river trip that showcases the vastness and diversity of the rainforest. Once there, visitors can find a vibrant city bustling with unique markets, colorful architecture, and the rich cultural tapestry. However, the challenging environment with its extreme humidity, diverse wildlife, and limited access to modern conveniences presents an intimidating yet thrilling experience for many travelers. Iquitos serves as a gateway to the mysteries of the Amazon, where every turn reveals unparalleled natural beauty, but also reminds one of the daunting power and unpredictability of one of the world's most incredible ecosystems. And finally, rounding out our list today, we have the Hill of Crosses in Lithuania. In the northern reaches of Lithuania, the Hill of Crosses stands as a poignant and captivating sight, rich in history and spiritual significance. This small hill, blanketed with hundreds of thousands of crosses, has become a symbol of unwavering faith and peaceful resistance. The tradition of placing crosses began in the 1831 uprising, and since then it has grown into an extraordinary and dense forest of crosses, crucifixes, rosaries, and statues. Each cross, varying in size from tiny to towering, tells a story of personal grief, national struggle, or heartfelt prayers. Visitors are immediately struck by the sight and the subtle sound of wind weaving through the crosses, creating an atmosphere that's both both solemn and inspiring. This site, resilient through periods of oppression and destruction, particularly during the Soviet era, stands as a testament to the enduring strength and hope of the Lithuanian people. The Hill of Crosses is not just a display of religious devotion, but also a powerful symbol of defiance against cultural and religious suppression, making it a unique and deeply moving destination that transcends its physical presence.
At number 10 is the Gavia Hippodrome. The Gavia Hippodrome in Brazil is famous for being seriously spooky. Back when they built it in the early 1900s, workers faced strange shadows and accidents during construction, leading some to believe that angry ghosts were disturbed from their resting place. The eerie occurrences continued even after construction ended. Shadows lurked around, workers mysteriously fell, and machines broke for no apparent reason. Some folks reckon that angry ghosts were mad about the construction on their resting spot. Even today, it's still creepy. People visiting or working there say they've seen ghostly figures in jockey outfits. But get this, it's not just a haunted spot, it's also where horse betting happens. Surprisingly, it's the only legitimately legal place for gambling in Brazil. So, while ghosts might be around, luck might just be on your side when you're betting at this place. At number 9 is Minas Gerais Cambucria, the Grand Hotel. I totally butchered that. It's got quite a spooky reputation. Room number 204 there is like the epicenter of all the creepy stuff. People who stayed there talk about feeling an eerie cold, hearing knocks on the door with no one around, and even seeing things that don't quite add up. I mean, it's not just one or two stories, there are multiple accounts of these strange happenings. Visitors have reported seeing things they can't explain, hearing noises that don't make sense, and feeling a weird vibe all around that place. The Grande Hotel seems to have this mysterious aura that makes people think twice about staying there. It's like something out of the horror movies, but hey, if you're into that kind of spooky stuff, maybe it's a place worth checking out if you dare. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support this channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing the notification bell, all of which is free. At number 8 is the Jolma Building. The Jolma Building in Brazil is known for being seriously spooky. Back in 1975, a huge fire tore through this 25-story building in just under 20 minutes because of an electrical problem. It was tragic. Over 486 people had lost their lives in the fire. Even after it was rebuilt and renamed Praça de Bandeira, eerie things just kept happening. People say they've spotted ghosts wandering around the halls and rooms, but what's even creepier is the story about the 13 souls who got stuck in the elevator during the fire. Some believe that these spirits are still hanging around, adding to the haunted vibe of the place. If you're someone who gets scared easily, this might not be the best spot for a visit. The history and the story surrounding this building are enough to make your hair stand on end. At number 7 is the Serra da Abobora in the Amazon jungle. Deep within the Amazon jungle lies a spine-chilling spot. It's infamous for a haunting legend involving an ancient ghost named Urutau, I think. This spectral being supposedly lures unsuspecting souls with the mesmerizing melody of a beautiful bird song, but here's the catch. Once drawn near, dreadful things reportedly start to unfold. It's said that those who venture too close to this spirit face frightening and inexplicable occurrences. It's no wonder very few tread into this part of the Amazon. This eerie tale teaches us a sobering lesson that even in the midst of breathtaking places like in the Amazon, there might lurk spine-tingling mysteries best left undisturbed. At number 6 is the Petropolis Museum. The Petropolis Museum, also known as the Imperial Museum of Brazil, has an eerie reputation that's tied to its 19th century origins. Constructed within the Grand Palace of Emperor Dom Pedro II, this site is believed to house the ghost of the former emperor himself. Visitors and staff reported sightings of this apparition, claiming to have witnessed his spectral figure moving through the halls, particularly after nightfall. This spectral presence has turned the Petropolis Museum into one of Brazil's most notorious haunted places. Despite its spine-chilling reputation, there remains a curious allure for those brave enough to explore its haunted corridors and experience the unsettling atmosphere firsthand. For those with a strong heart and a penchant for the supernatural, this haunted locale in Brazil might offer an unforgettable, albeit potentially hair-raising experience. At number 5 is the Brasilia City Hall. You know, the Brasilia City Hall might seem like just another government building in Brazil's federal district, but it has been said that this place, sitting right there in Brasilia, has a history that might make you think twice before wandering in alone. Legend has it that this city hall wasn't always a place for politicians and meetings. No, it was once a mortuary where they stored a bunch of bodies before they were laid to rest. And get this, the place burned down at one point, only to rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Now, the creepy stuff doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. People have reported doors slamming shut out of the blue, cabinets making a racket, and windows closing without a soul touching them. Oh, and there's a story about a guy who got locked in a room all by himself while there wasn't a single other person around. Pretty spooky. At number 4 is the road to Petropolis from Rio de Janeiro. As you head down this road from Rio de Janeiro, this road has some spooky stories attached to it. People driving there have claimed to see a strange thing. A blonde lady on the side of the road. I mean, it doesn't sound so strange, but what is odd is that she seems to be signaling for help, pointing at a broken down car and a body lying nearby. Now, when folks stop to assist, they freak out because it's the same woman they just saw moments ago, now lying lifeless by the car. And here's the creepy part. Poof! She and the car vanish into thin air. It's left those drivers feeling pretty shaken up. So if you're planning to take that road, just keep your eyes peeled and stay sharp. You never know what strange things might happen along the way. At number 3 is the Dream Beach. The Dream Beach in Sao Paulo, Itanheim, holds a chilling reputation among haunted spots in Brazil. Legend has it that the lingering spirits of a deceased couple haunt this very shore. Witnesses claim to have glimpsed these apparitions, two spectral figures, their forms decayed, vanishing into thin air without a trace. Even the beach's maintenance crew attest to eerie occurrences, citing unexplained voices and unsettling noises resonating across the deserted expanse in the dead of night. The spectral setting serves as a cautionary tale warning visitors to proceed with extreme caution lest they too become entangled in the mysteries that shroud the Dream Beach. And at number 2 is the road to Victoria. Truckers often drive down the road to Victoria in Campos, Rio de Janeiro, but there's something eerie about it. Lots of drivers say they've seen ghosts while on this road. These spooky figures suddenly appear in front of the trucks, causing drivers to panic and hit the brakes to avoid hitting them. Now, what's really weird is that as soon as the trucks stop, these ghostly figures just vanish. People believe they might be the spirits of construction workers who perished while building the road. It's like they're stuck there, tied to the construction work they're used to. That would really suck. Imagine being forced to haunt the place you worked for the rest of your afterlife. Boy, oh boy. It's a pretty scary place and lots of folks avoid driving there at night. It's the stories about these ghosts that make people think twice about taking that road. And coming in at number 1 is Snake Island in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Now this place technically isn't haunted, but if you ask me, it's definitely the scariest place on this list. This remote island is home to the golden lancehead vipers, whose venomous bite packs a punch that's 5 times stronger than any snake found in Brazil. But they're not the only snakes around, as in fact, here is where the snake density reaches nightmarish proportions. Imagine 1 to 5 snakes lurking in every square meter. Why are they so fearsome? Well, blame it on geography. When Snake Island parted ways with mainland Brazil 11,000 years ago, these snakes were forced to confront evolution by becoming aerial assassins. Yes, that's right, with no terrestrial prey to feast upon, they mastered tree dwelling and developed a venom 5 times more potent than their mainland kin. This lethal venom can eliminate birds instantly and even, get this, melt human flesh. So the Brazilian government wisely bans entry to this reptilian Eden. Very wisely. It's a chilling reminder that nature's adaptability can birth monsters even in the most unlikely places.
Coming in at number 10 is Fort Delaware. Fort Delaware, built in the 19th century to protect the ports of Wilmington and Philadelphia, served as a prison camp for Confederate prisoners of war during the Civil War. Almost 13,000 prisoners were held at one time, and around 33,000 were kept there in total over the course of the war. Now, conditions were rough, and around 2,500 men died at the fort. The fort was then abandoned towards the end of World War II and became a state park in 1951. Today, it is extremely haunted. It's rumored that throughout the parade grounds, Confederate spirits roam, still trying to escape from the fort. One of the most popular stories is of an attempted escape from a Confederate drummer boy. Legend has it he tried to fake his own death in order to be transported back across the river in a coffin. Waiting on him on the other side of the river were either sympathetic Union troops or fellow fellow inmates who were supposed to free him from the coffin. Unfortunately, a shift change SWAT personnel, and instead of being freed, the boy was buried alive. Now there's also a photograph that was taken of a ghost there who's called the Blue Man, and this place is just filled with ghosts roaming around. Number 9. Poinsett Bridge. Poinsett Bridge is the oldest bridge in South Carolina and perhaps the entire southeastern United States. According to local folklore, Poinsett Bridge was built on the site of an old Indian burial ground dating back to when Cherokees were the only inhabitants of the mountains of the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. With this, it's no shock that this place is haunted. Other stories go that some of the men who worked to build Poinsett Bridge died during the bridge's construction due to a variety of illnesses, one of which was malaria. These men were then supposedly buried under and even within the bridge itself. Now, according to one legend, a slave was once hung under Poinsett Bridge and his ghost still haunts it, said resident Doris Davis. The bridge is haunted by those who helped build it but got none of Joel Poinsett's glory. The ghosts of the slaves who died during construction sometimes reappear as lights in the surrounding woods and on the bridge itself after dusk and hover in mid-air for a few seconds and then vanish. Number 8. Eastern State Penitentiary. Eastern State Penitentiary is a former prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The punishments here were horrible. There was a water bath in which inmates were dunked then hung up on a wall in winter until ice formed on the skin. There was the mad chair, which bound an inmate so tightly that circulation was cut off, later necessitating amputations. There was the iron gag, in which an inmate's hands were tied behind the back and strapped to an iron collar in the mouth so that any movement caused the tongue to tear and bleed profusely. And then there was the hole, which was an underground cell where prisoners had no light, no human contact, no exercise, no toilet, and little food and air. With all these horrors, it's no shock that the place is haunted. Cell Block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling, Cell Block 6 for shadowy figures darting along the walls, and Cell Block 4 for visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers. There's footsteps, and one of the most legendary tales comes from Gary Johnson, who helps maintain the crumbling old locks at the prison. In the early 1990s, he had just opened an old lock in Cell Block 4 when he said a force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. He described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell. He also added that tormented faces appeared on the cell walls and that one form in particular beckoned to him. Number 7. Bodie. Bodie is a ghost town located in California. In the 1870s and 80s, Bodie boomed when gold was found in the hills surrounding Mono Lake, which at one point was home to 10,000 people. It's now a state historic park, with some parts of the town preserved in a state of arrested decay. Now, there are many reports of supernatural activity here, including ghost sightings and music playing from shuttered bars. There's also a legend that any visitor who takes anything from Bodie, even a rock, will be cursed with bad luck and health problems upon leaving. According to park rangers, many who have taken things eventually return them to the park to rid themselves of this curse. Now, the Gregory House is said to be haunted by the ghost of an old woman. Guests and staff have reported seeing her sitting in a rocking chair knitting an Afghan. Other times, the rocking chair has been seen rocking on its own. The Mendocini House is called home to several friendly ghosts. One is thought to be Miss Mocindy, who loved to cook her Italian food, and rangers report today that they often smell the delicious aroma of her cooking when they enter the house. Number 6. Emily's Bridge. Emily's Bridge in Stowe, Vermont is a 50-foot long bridge that's said to be the site of a young woman's death in the mid-1800s. According to legend, the woman, Emily, was supposed to meet her lover at the bridge to elope, but she ended up hanging herself from the rafters when he never showed up. Today, Emily's ghost is said to haunt the site, and instead of being full of sorrow, she's full of vengeance, as it's been reported that she claws at passing cars and even scratches the backs of pedestrians until they bleed. There are slightly less menacing spooks as well, like images of a white apparition and strange voices and footsteps coming from the tunnel. Number 5. Letchworth Village. Letchworth Village, located in New York, is a complex that used to be a mental institution from 1911 to 1996. Now, like most mental institutions, it closed after controversial experience on mental patients were condemned. The village, at the height of treatment in the 1960s, employed more than 10,000 locals who oversaw the patients on the grounds. Letchworth Village's reputation began its downward spiral in 1972 when journalist Geraldo Rivera published an expose on the cruel practices at Letchworth. Some things he revealed were, from the 1930s to 60s, Letchworth was a testing ground and then a frequent utilizer of electroconvulsive shock therapy, both as a treatment model and to see what effects it had on the brains of the feeble-minded morons, imbeciles, and idiots, to use the official medical terms of the times. Now, most of these patients didn't survive, or they ended up far worse than they started. In the 1930s and 40s, trepanning and lobotomies, physical and chemical, were carried out in secret, often as a part of research studies. More than 800 people died as a result of mistreatment or experimentation, and they were buried in unmarked graves at the far end of the Letchworth property. Number 4. The Shanghai Tunnels. The Shanghai Tunnels in Portland were built by Chinese workers during the time when Chinatown was the center for trade business. The tunnel's original design was for transporting goods from cargo ships to the inner city. By using the tunnels, the ship's crew could avoid the hassle of inner city traffic. Now, the tunnels get their name for the practice of kidnapping and selling men as workers on ships headed to East Asia. Restless, agitated spirits of men who were drugged and trafficked in the city ports during the early 19th century are said to haunt the underground tunnels, through which they were reportedly sold. Legend has it that local saloons contained entrances to the tunnels, enabling swindlers to prey on unsuspecting patrons and bring them directly underground before they even knew what was going on. Now, deep within the tunnels, travelers have reported feeling goosebumps as if someone is watching them from the shadows. Many people report seeing an Asian man walking past them in the tunnels, and explorers name the spirit Sam and say that he is responsible for turning off the lights in the bar basements. Sam also likes to move things around in the tunnels as explorers walk by. Now, up until 2023, visitors could also take walking tours to learn more about the dark history of the tunnels, but the tours have ended indefinitely. Number 3. Northern State Mental Hospital. Northern State Mental Hospital in Washington operated from 1912 to 1976. Like countless other mental asylums of the time, grisly experiments were performed on patients, some of which have even been rumored to be part of the top secret government program MK Ultra. Now, patients were being subjected to treatments like insulin shock therapy, lobotomies, and electroshock therapy. Heavy sedation with powerful drugs was also a common form of treatment, but truly it was just to keep patients in line and submissive. Now, countless patients died here, and rarely were the bodies claimed by families, so their disposal was left to the state. According to hospital records, 1,487 bodies are buried on the grounds of the asylum. The Washington state legislature cut off funding to the asylum, and in 1976, Northern State officially closed its doors. Now, with so much suffering, death, and disregard for human life, the place is just straight up haunted. Most of those who were admitted weren't actually suffering from severe mental illness and were sent to the asylum to live out the rest of their lives under lock and key. Those who dare visit the asylum grounds report strange phenomena such as cold spots, the feeling of being watched, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched. Now, some have seen strange shadows darting around the graveyard. Now, the most commonly encountered entity is that of a young girl with a red ball and a man chasing after her. They've been seen running around the property, though some report the girl standing alone in the graveyard as well. Number 2. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park in West Virginia is full of history. Legend has it that this land in Rock, West Virginia was once occupied by the Clay family, whose sons and daughters were kidnapped and had their lives ended by Native Americans, while the father, Mitchell Clay, was out hunting. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park opened in 1926 and was abandoned 40 years later after a girl died on the swing set and a boy drowned in the pond. In 1985, Gaylord White, a former employee of the park, purchased the land with plans to reopen it, but those dreams were put to a stop after human remains were found buried on the property. There were 13 skeletons in total. White believes the premises to be haunted and says he's seen the girl who met her fatal end after a truck backed into her on the swings. And coming at number 1 is Summerwind Mansion. Summerwind Mansion in Wisconsin is believed to be one of the most haunted places in the US. This abandoned building is located on the shores of West Bay Lake in Vilas County on private land. The Lama were the owners of this mansion, and for 15 years of their occupancy, they experienced strange things. In the mid-1930s, as the family was busy dining, the door to the basement opened with a man appearing out of thin air. Limit shot at the spirit twice and chased him back into the cellar. The family later moved out, leaving the mansion empty until the 1970s when Arnold and Ginger Hinshaw purchased the building to turn it into a dream dream home. However, the paranormal activity chased the crew away, and the Hinshaws then took the renovation work into their own hands. Even then, the strange happenings did not stop. One night, Mary, Arnold's daughter, found a human skull and a handful of black hair in a hidden crawl space, which mysteriously disappeared when the police decided to investigate the house years later. The Hinshaws started behaving abnormally, and strange things still happen at that mansion, even after its destruction by lightning that occurred in 1988, leaving much of it completely destroyed.
At number 10 is the Phoenix Archive. This subterranean fortress deep beneath the rocky expanse of Nevada and erected during the height of the Cold War wasn't just another concrete heaven, no. This was a vault of humanity's most crucial secrets, safeguarded against the specter of nuclear annihilation. Within its impenetrable walls, beyond layers of reinforced steel and labyrinth-like corridors, dwelled an archive unparalleled in significance. This repository hoarded vital government records, from the intricacies of nuclear technology to blueprints which would map the nation's restoration in case of nuclear war. Its halls echoed with the weight of knowledge, plans to rebuild a fractured world. Facilities boasted state-of-the-art climate controls, shielding the documents from decay. An autonomous power grid ensured perpetual functionality of the site. Contingency plans, meticulous and exhaustive, outlined protocols for access, protection, and retrieval post-catastrophe. However, the vault remained a clandestine sanctuary, its secrets concealed from prying eyes, barring all except those sworn to its guardianship. To this very day, the exact location and specifics regarding the Phoenix Archive remains a closely guarded United States secret. Obviously, we don't want people breaking in there and stealing plans for nuclear weapons. At number 9 is Kliuch in the USSR. I hope I pronounced that right, probably not. Now, Americans weren't the only ones thinking ahead with nuclear bunkers. During the Cold War, the USSR crafted a secret haven known by a cryptic code name, Kliuch, which means key in Russian, I hope. This subterranean complex, concealed deep within the Siberian wilderness, housed top government officials in times of crisis. Kliuch is a labyrinth of reinforced tunnels and chambers boasting state-of-the-art communication systems, provisions for years, and impenetrable security measures. This covert sanctuary was an ace up the sleeve, a strategic refuge in case the geopolitical chess match turned perilous, if you get my drift. In the modern era, Kliuch has morphed from its original intent. Repurposed into a research and development center, its sophisticated infrastructure now serves as an incubator for cutting-edge technologies. Think stuff like, I don't know, advanced AI, biotech labs, and renewable energy experiments. However, the echoes of its secret past still linger, shrouded in mystery and completely off limits to the public. The tales of its former purpose remain a reminder of bygone era, while its reinvention represents a beacon of hope for progress and shared knowledge. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Raven Rock Mountain Complex. Deep within Pennsylvania lies the Raven Rock Mountain Complex, a place veiled in secrecy. This highly guarded military installation earned its moniker as the Underground Pentagon. Constructed during the Cold War era, it stood as a fail-safe command center for the Pentagon, meant to preserve government operations if nuclear conflict had erupted. Imagine a facility nestled within a mountain, harboring an intricate network of underground passages, fortified structures, and backup power grids. It's a fortress designed to persist through cataclysmic events, boasting communication systems, medical amenities, and living quarters for sustained habitation. Originally conceived for Cold War uncertainties, this complex remains active today, shrouded in mystery. Though the specifics are locked behind classified doors, what we do know is that it has an indispensable role in supporting the US government and military operations. In recent times, like during the 2020 crisis, this covert bastion was activated, emphasizing its ongoing significance in a national defense strategy. The Raven Rock Mountain Complex stands as a testament to strategic foresight, ensuring that amidst the chaos of worst-case scenarios, a hidden heaven existed, shielded, operational, and ready to facilitate crucial functions when the world teeters on the brink of catastrophe. At number 7 is the Havana Nexus. Constructed deep beneath the Cuban landscape during the tense era of the Cold War, it wasn't just a bunker, but a fortress designed to withstand the deadliest of threats. It was actually a nuclear silo camouflaged under layers of reinforced concrete and hidden miles beneath the Earth's surface. This subterranean marvel served a dual purpose, sheltering high-ranking officials during a nuclear strike and acting as a command center for launching counterattacks. Conceived as a safeguard against imminent threats, the Havana Nexus wasn't merely a silo. It functioned as a nerve center, orchestrating remote launch capabilities from multiple nuclear arsenals dispersed across the nation. This subterranean stronghold boasted an advanced communication network, encryption technologies, and fail-safe mechanisms to ensure the operational continuity amidst chaos. At number 6 is Mount Pony Culpeper in Virginia. So imagine a secret underground bunker nestled into a hillside 75 miles away from Washington, Washington, D.C. This bunker isn't just an ordinary underground shelter, it was specifically built for the top dogs of the Federal Reserve System. Named Mount Pony, it held a staggering $4 billion in currency. It's enough cash to keep things running smoothly east of the Mississippi River for a couple of years, let's say if things went haywire. Constructed in 1969, this place was like a fortress for money, safeguarding around 700 million pieces of currency. And get this, many of them were those $2 bills that weren't too popular back then. Instead of getting rid of them, the government thought, hey, let's just stash them in the bunker. Post-apocalypse, people won't really be too picky about the cash they use. Smart, I guess. Today, the once cash-filled hideaway serves a different purpose. It became an archive facility for the Library of Congress, preserving audio-visual records. But the history of how it was once a fortress for cold, hard cash remains a fascinating tale. At number 5 is Project Perseus. Deep within the heart of a remote mountain range along the North American border lies a facility once known as Project Perseus. Built during the tense era of the Cold War, this secret underground bunker was a haven for high-ranking US government officials, devised to ensure the continuity of government operations in the event of a nuclear catastrophe. With multiple levels carved into the bedrock, it housed living quarters, communication centers, medical facilities, and even a small hydroponic farm for sustenance. Access to Project Perseus was strictly regulated, requiring multiple security clearances and a labyrinth series of tunnels designed to deter any unauthorized entry. This location was so covert that even some high-ranking officials were unaware of its existence. However, as the Cold War thawed, Project Perseus evolved. Its purpose shifted towards serving as a top-secret research hub for advanced tech. The bunker became a pivotal site for developing cutting-edge defense systems and strategic planning, shielded from public knowledge. In the modern age, Project Perseus has adapted further, becoming a clandestine think tank for emerging global threats such as cyber warfare and environmental crises. It serves as a covert meeting ground for interdisciplinary experts, strategists, and policymakers, safeguarding the nation against unforeseen perils while remaining hidden from public scrutiny. That sounds like the Illuminati, holy cow. At number 4 is S4. Deep within the Nevada desert lies a shroud of mystery concealing a secret underground bunkers like S4, a site adjoining the notorious Area 51. Imagine this. A hidden hangar carved into the rugged mountainous terrain, shielded from prying eyes. Bob Lazar, a former employee, unveiled glimpses of S4's clandestine operations, recounting eerie tales of reverse-engineered alien tech. S4's mystique lies in its inaccessibility. Despite fervent curiosity, civilians are unequivocally barred from entering those enclaves. The rationale is, well, national security. The government guards these bunkers with utmost secrecy, claiming they house top-secret experiments in advanced aerospace research. Conspiracy theories persist, propelling imaginations into overdrive. Lazar's descriptions of S4's depicted eerie hangar supposedly housing unearthly aircraft is stirring a cocktail of intrigue and skepticism. At number 3 is Project Greek Island. Beneath a luxurious resort lies a secret underground bunker you've probably never allowed to see. The Greenbrier Resort, nestled in West Virginia, held a concealed post-apocalyptic hideout for 30 years. Could you believe it was right next to where people sip on martinis? Here's the kicker, even the resort's official historian didn't know about it. Imagine knowing every corner of a place but having no clue that a massive bunker is right underneath your nose. This bunker was no joke. It could shelter every member of the US House and Senate during a nuclear crisis. Picture a Walmart-sized space behind 3-foot thick concrete walls, complete with rows of bunk beds for 1,100 people. Built during the 1950s, this bunker was a product of the Cold War fears. President Eisenhower thought it'd be brilliant to hide Congress here if things went south. The best part? Thousands of folks strolled in and out for 30 years without realizing they were in a secret bunker. They just thought it was a conference facility or a meeting place for car companies. At number 2 is Forte Ettore. Deep beneath the surface of a secluded airport in Italy lies a clandestine sanctuary known as Forte Ettore. During the later half of the Cold War, this covert bunker wasn't built to shelter VIPs or government elites, but actually to protect priceless works of art from potential conflict and destruction. Forte Ettore was designed to withstand any threat, featuring reinforced walls, climate-controlled chambers, and the state-of-the-art security systems. Its covert location beneath the airport offered secrecy and protection, accessible only to a select few entrusted with its existence. The protocols were stringent, only a handful of trusted individuals had access to these rooms. Security measures included biometric scanners, passcodes, and multiple layers of authentication. At number 1, nestled within the robust granite Sharon Mountain lies the mysterious labyrinth, the NORAD complex. While many Cold War bunkers shrouded themselves in secrecy, this one stood unique. Remarkably, its construction wasn't clandestine. It was actually a public spectacle which marked its inception in 1961. 2 tons of dynamite daily sculpting a 5-acre underground behemoth. Obviously it drew some prying eyes. Reservoirs brim with water and fuel, while expansive chambers accommodate towering 3-story structures. By 1967, this subterranean marvel became fully operational, securing its pivotal role. Today, rebranded as an alternate command hub, it remains a veiled entity beyond public access. A stronghold echoing the historical tensions of a bygone era, now poised for unforeseen contingencies. Its purposeful seclusion hints at the seclusive nature of its operations, eluding the public eye, confined to the realm of speculation. This hallowed fortress embodies a peculiar legacy, a testament to human preparedness, shielded from prying eyes, veiled in government intrigue. The silence that envelops its existence speaks volumes, apart from the silence that it took to make the place to begin with.
Coming in at number 10 is Tsingy de Barramara. Located on the very western edge of Madagascar, an island off the coast of southern Africa, this national park is centered around 2 large geographical features called Great Tsingy and Little Tsingy. These rock formations are plateaus, which have had deep ruts cut into them by the groundwater to the point of making them completely unable to be traveled or walked upon. The word Tsingy, when translated, even means where one cannot walk barefoot, making it the perfect name for this incredibly unique area of the world. Because of the vast area in which these formations are located, the park was made unexplorable simply because of the fact that it is impossible to cross over the jagged plateaus. And let me just say, I wouldn't even want to try to walk through there. Number 9. Mars. Humans have always dreamed about going and creating life on Mars, and they're trying to make that a reality. Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, has long predicted that humans will land on Mars by 2029, but there are some huge challenges when trying to do that. The biggest challenge to go to Mars is the time duration to go there and come back. The window for launch to Mars from Earth only happens approximately every 2 years and 2 months. This means astronauts leaving in 2024 wouldn't be able to get help before 2026 when the next launch window opens and help gets there after the 9-month journey. Now the other hard part of going to Mars is the landing. Under Elon's plan, your spaceship would be approaching Mars at 62,000 miles per hour. As it descends into the atmosphere, the ship would then use supersonic retropropulsion, aka lots of little rockets firing at once, in order to land on the surface of Mars. Now this landing maneuver is risky because Mars's atmosphere is so much thinner than Earth's, so there's less friction to slow you down. NASA has struggled to land even small robots on the surface. The system used to decelerate and then parachute the Curiosity rover on Mars was mind-boggling, and Curiosity only weighed 1 ton, and Elon is envisioning 450 tons. Plenty could go wrong, like an explosion. Now it's also said that Mars wouldn't be an ideal place to live as there's radiation exposure, there's low sources of energy, and we can't grow food there, and so much more. Will we ever make it to Mars? Who knows, but we sure won't be living there anytime soon. Number 8. North Sentinel Island. This small island lies in the Bay of Bengal between the southern coasts of India and Thailand, making it extremely remote. Its inhabitants, called the Sentinelese people, are the only human beings who have ever lived on the island and have long since refused to accept modern visitors. Anyone who comes to the island to try and explore or study the area is immediately rejected, oftentimes with violence. The Sentinelese tribe have existed on the island for more than 50,000 years as per the protection given by the Indian government. The island is forbidden for any visitors of any kind. Now throughout history, encounters with the population have been met with violence, as in 2006 the tribe ended the lives of 2 fishermen whose boat had been dragged by the current on their shores. Then in 2018, John Allen Cho, who is reported to be a Christian preacher and a US citizen, was shot dead by them after he illegally entered the prohibited area with the help of local fishermen. Now according to The Guardian, a 3-mile restriction zone prevents visitors from entering the territory. Due to all this, the Indian government has abandoned any plans to contact the Sentinels. The entire tribe could be wiped out by diseases to which they have no immunity, which is why authorities respect their wish to remain uncontacted. Because of this, the island exists completely out of touch with the rest of the modern world, and it's basically completely unexplored. Number 7. Namib Desert. This desert, located along the Atlantic coasts of Angola, Namibia, and South Africa, stretches for more than 1,200 miles and is one of the driest places in the entire world. In some parts, the desert only sees 2 millimeters of water for the entire year, which means that it's basically impossible for anything to survive. And the few living things that do live must do it with the most minimal amount of water possible. Near the coast, this desert consists mostly of giant sand seas that span hundreds of miles. Any living thing that gets left or lost in the areas would never be able to live without a rescue. In less arid areas, there are indigenous people who manage to survive, but for the most part, it is only home to invertebrates like scorpions and other small animals that can live with almost no water. Safe to say, no humans can survive there. Number 6. Val d'Arvi. In recent decades, the world has seen less and less of people who still manage to remain out of touch with modern day technology and civilization, but the few indigenous people left, the Val d'Arvi is home to 14 different groups of them. With more than 3,000 individual indigenous people belonging to 14 different tribes, the Brazilian government has prohibited people from entering the area in order to preserve the native people and their traditions. This 32,990 square mile area is bigger than the entire country of Austria. The area, along with its inhabitants, is observed by the government from the air. Now on June 4, 2022, 2 journalists went missing from the Icota River in the Val d'Arvi region in the extreme west of the Amazon on the border with Peru. On June 14, 2022, their bodies were found, and the Brazilian president said something wicked was done to them, and this is why the area is prohibited. Number 5. Mariana Trench. In the western part of the Pacific Ocean, just east of the Philippines, lies the deepest part of our planet's oceans, the Mariana Trench. Now this massive crescent-shaped scar in the Earth's crust is 1,500 miles long and reaches a depth of 36,000 feet in a valley named Challenger Deep. The trench is so deep that even if you drop the entirety of Mount Everest into it, the tip of the mountain would still be a mile from the surface. Now James Cameron reached the bottom in the submersible vessel Deep Sea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the area floor coming in 2020 when the Chinese submersible Fendajuzi made it all the way down. Now because of the sheer size and pressure, only 4 expeditions in total have successfully descended. The Mariana Trench is probably one of the most inaccessible locations on the entire planet for mankind, and because of this we may never know if some unknown species have made it their home. Number 4. Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is a mountain in Pakistan which reaches a staggering 7,453 meters, and to this day the summit has remained unclimbed. In 2003, Bhutan banned all climbing, but some expeditions have been able to obtain permits. In 2014, English mountaineer Pete Thompson attempted to scale the mountain, hoping to reach the summit. Thompson expected to have climbed the final 1,453 meters without ropes, but the presence of hard ice derailed his plan to reach the top, forcing him to turn back at the 6,000 meter mark. Now prior to Thompson's attempt, a Spanish team was rumored made it all the way to 6,650 meters and remains the highest point on the mountain anyone has reached. Only a handful of attempts have been made to reach the summit and none have been successful. Machu Picchu is one of the tallest mountains on Earth that remains unclimbed, and it's the tallest one of all that is not off limits due to religious or political prohibitions. Number 3. Cape Melville. The lost world of Cape Melville is an Australian headland that had been cut off from exploration by a surrounding wall made of boulders of granite that are hundreds of feet tall. While they've effectively protected its internal rainforest habitat, it also means that the area is virtually impossible to map. In 2013, Conrad Hoskin from James Cook University and a National Geographic film crew were dropped by helicopter onto the rugged Cape Melville mountain range on Cape York Peninsula earlier this year and were amazed at finding new species of animals. Now the virtually impassable mountain range is home to millions of black granite boulders the size of cars and houses, piled hundreds of meters high, eroded in places after being thrust up through the earth millions of years ago. Number 2. Point Nemo. A pole of inaccessibility with respect to a geographical creation of inaccessibility marks a location that is the most challenging to reach. In plain terms, it often refers to the most distant point from the coastline. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility, known as Point Nemo, is the place in the ocean that is furthest from land. The area is so remote that with any location more than 400 kilometers, 250 miles from an inhabited area, sometimes the closest human beings are astronauts aboard the International Space Station when it passes overhead. Point Nemo is relatively lifeless, its location within the South Pacific Gyre blocks nutrients from reaching the area, and being so far from land it gets little nutrient runoff from coastal waters. I would not want to find myself here. And coming in at number 1 is Gangkar Pinsum. Considering the world's tallest unclimbed mountain by many, Gangkar Pinsum's peak has never been scaled, and it's unlikely that anyone will if the government has anything to say about it. The peaks of Gangkar Pinsum are sacred to the people of Bhutan, and it's considered extremely taboo for anyone to attempt to scale its slopes and peaks. But ordinance and taboos can't stop everyone, and since part of the mountain extends across the Chinese border, the first and only attempt to assail it was led by a Japanese climbing team in 1998. They were stopped short of their goal to explore the uncharted mountain by politically fueled outrage from Bhutan. Since then, no one else has tried to climb it, and I don't blame them.
And we're starting things off with Tepito in Mexico City. Tepito, located in Mexico City, is known for its high levels of crime and danger. It is considered one of the most notorious neighborhoods in the city. It's infamous for its illicit activities, organized crime, and has a reputation for violence and lawlessness. The area has a high presence of criminal gangs involved in various illegal enterprises like the sale of counterfeit goods and stolen merchandise, but that's just what's on the surface. If you know where to go here, you can find a lot worse. The narrow streets of Tepito are often patrolled by gangs, and sure, police patrol the area, but they have a hard time maintaining any control. The criminal elements in this area are deeply entrenched. Poverty and unemployment are very high, and incidents of violence, including shootouts and clashes between rival gangs, are not uncommon. Going here as a tourist, you need to exercise extreme caution and avoid wandering into unfamiliar areas, especially after dark. If you are enjoying our channel so far, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's free, you got nothing to lose, and we got awesome content coming at you every single day. Number 9, Mara Salvatrucha in El Salvador. Mara Salvatrucha, commonly known as MS-13, originated in Los Angeles. MS-13 has become one of the most notorious and dangerous gangs in the entire world, with a strong presence in San Salvador, El Salvador. The gang has expanded its influence throughout Central America and beyond, engaging in various criminal activities. In San Salvador, MS-13 is deeply entrenched in impoverished neighborhoods, contributing to high levels of violence and crime. The gang's presence has led to an atmosphere of fear and insecurity, with residents facing the constant threat of extortion and intimidation. San Salvador, the capital city of El Salvador, has struggled with gang-related violence for years, and MS-13 is a major contributor to the city's crime rates. The gang's involvement in territorial disputes and clashes with rival gangs often results in violent confrontations. Law enforcement in El Salvador has intensified efforts to combat gang-related crime, but the influence of MS-13 continues to be a huge challenge. The social and economic conditions in El Salvador only make the problem worse, with poverty and lack of opportunities making for a lot of young men who become perfect for gang recruitment. Next on the list is Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. This area has long been associated with high levels of violence, especially during the peak of narcotics-related conflicts in the mid-2000s. The city became known as one of the most dangerous places in Mexico because of intense battles between rival cartels vying for control over trafficking routes. Homicide rates surged during this period, making Ciudad Juarez one of the focal points of Mexico's struggle against organized crime. It continues to face challenges related to organized crime and corruption. The city's proximity to the US border also makes it a strategic location for smuggling illegal substances. Despite initiatives to enhance security and economic development, socioeconomic issues still continue, and this area has witnessed a decline in violence compared to its peak years, but occasional spikes in criminal activities still happen. Street-level crime like robbery and extortion is still a major concern, affecting both residents and businesses. In at number 7 is Kingston, Jamaica. Kingston in Jamaica stands out as one of the world's riskiest cities, ranking 19th for violence in 2018. The city's reputation is linked to rampant gang conflicts fueled by the Jamaica police force's understaffing and resource limitations, resulting in a crime rate 3 times higher than the regional average. Trenchtown, a neighborhood in Kingston, has become a hotspot for gang activity, prompting a curfew in January of 2021 following a series of shootings. Despite this curfew, though, the violence persisted, with 2 more fatal drive-by shootings in June of that year alone. The conditions in Trenchtown are so extreme that the US Embassy actually prohibits its staff from venturing into the area. Recent reports from the Kingston Western Police Division indicate an 11% surge in violent deaths and a 25% increase in is attributed to ongoing clashes between the Sox and the Brooklyn gangs. Trenchtown residents voice grievances about law enforcement and security forces seemingly turning a blind eye to criminal activities, creating an environment where gangs operate with relative impunity. Next up, we have Middle East, Baltimore. Baltimore, Maryland is an American city that has become known for its association with danger and dysfunction. You may recognize this area if you've ever seen The Wire. The Middle East neighborhood, renamed the East Baltimore Development Initiative in 2002, is still known by its original name to locals. The area has been touted as, apparently, the most drastic urban development initiative in recent American history, but crime continues to be a huge problem in the neighborhood. The area has a violent crime rate that is a staggering 858% higher than the national average. While there has been a 3% year-on-year reduction in crime, residents still face a 1 in 10 chance of falling victim to criminal activities. Household incomes and house prices are major factors, and graduation rates that lag significantly behind the Maryland average. Number 5, Cape Flats, South Africa. Cape Flats is a troubled neighborhood in Cape Town, South Africa, which struggles with rampant gang violence. This area comprises densely packed townships filled with notorious gangs like the Americans, Hard Livings, Fancy Boys, and Dixie Boys. The area is dangerous enough that armed troops keep tabs on the situation with regular patrols. The University of Cape Town's Guy Lamb points out the chaos escalated significantly when former cop Chris Prince Lou supplied around 2,500 firearms to these groups. The consequences have been pretty bad, with a decade-long spree of bloodshed showing no signs of letting up. In March of 2021, violence claimed the lives of 14 people in Cape Flats and left another 10 seriously injured. A few months later, a distressing report documented 12 tragic deaths in just a few days. The violence is fueled by an estimated 100,000 individuals operating in approximately 130 gangs, locked in constant battles for money, territory, and influence. Next up on our list is Fishcorn, Detroit, or as it's sometimes referred to, Fishcorn. Fishcorn, Detroit is not exactly a walk in the park. Detroit police refer to it as the most dangerous neighborhood in Detroit, which is saying a lot. For starters, its crime rate is 123% higher than the Detroit average and 463% higher than the United States average. And if we want to zoom out even further, the violent crime rate in this neighborhood is a whopping 1,409% greater than the national average. That should give you a good idea of what to expect venturing into an area like this. Things really got bad in Detroit when it filed for bankruptcy in 2013. And the population has started to decline ever since as crime started getting worse and worse. In Fishcorn, 1 in 8 people will be the victim of a crime, according to data collected in 2019. And at number 3, we have Roquinha in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This is the largest favela, not just in the city, but in all of Brazil. It's incredibly dense, with 200,000 people or more living there. And of course, high density combined with poverty is a breeding ground for criminal activity. At one time, it was a shanty town with barely any basic amenities, but it eventually developed into what it is now, an urbanized slum. There are businesses there now, cable TV. At one point there was even a McDonald's, but the area is still said to be one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. The favela is controlled by Amigos dos Amigos, an organized crime syndicate, and a lot of the violence that goes on in this area is turf wars between them and other criminal organizations. Next on the list, Scampia in Naples, Italy. This place is a hotspot for the sale of illicit substances. The Camorra mobsters, who are the oldest mob group in Italy, rule over the criminal underworld in Naples, and apparently in this neighborhood especially, young men form groups often referred to as baby gangs, committing particularly heinous acts of violence in order to gain the attention of the senior mobsters. The unemployment rate is very high in this area, and that combined with the neighborhood's high density and overall poverty is just not a good mix. The area is currently being reworked. A lot of the apartments are being demolished, with residents moving into other apartments in areas nearby. The hope is that this may help curb the concentration of the crime, but that remains to be seen. But finally, we have Lunik 9 in Slovakia. Lunik 9 is a neighborhood with high crime rates and social challenges, to put it lightly. It's become known for its dilapidated buildings, limited infrastructure, and high unemployment rates. Honestly, it looks more like a war zone than a neighborhood. The area primarily consists of block-style housing, with many buildings falling into disrepair. Overcrowding is a common issue, poverty is widespread, with a significant portion of the population facing economic hardship. It's an environment that fosters crime. Gang activity is very prevalent in this area, and the lack of effective policing and community services only adds to the issue. Abandoned buildings and poorly lit areas provide cover for illicit activities. The educational system in Lunik 9 is also not great. Many of the young people who make up most of the area, by the way, a very high percentage, experience barriers to proper education. Limited access to resources and a challenging home environment create this cycle of academic underachievement, and social services struggle to meet the demands of the community. Then we're starting things off with Greco. This commune in the southern Italian region of Basilicata now stands as a ghost town. Dilapidated homes, crumbling walls, and remnants of a once vibrant community now stand frozen in time, and there have been rumors of hauntings surrounding the place for decades. Greco's history can be traced back to the 8th century, with the settlement evolving over the centuries into a thriving community. But various natural disasters like earthquakes and landslides forced the residents to abandon their homes in the mid-20th century. The final exodus took place in 1963 when the government deemed the town unsafe to live in. Greco, or whatever's left of it now, still stands today, and those empty houses and deserted streets have fueled countless legends of hauntings and supernatural occurrences. Visitors have reported strange sounds and ghostly apparitions. Some attribute these phenomena to the tragic events that led to the town's abandonment. One popular tale revolves around the Church of Santa Maria della Stella. According to the locals, the church is haunted by the ghost of a nun who allegedly died under mysterious circumstances. Visitors claim to have heard footsteps, whispers, and even seen the ghostly figure wandering through the crumbling aisles. At our number 9 spot, we have Poveglia. The small island located in the Venetian lagoon of northern Italy is said to be one of the most haunted places in the country. The origins of Poveglia date back to the Roman era, but it got its sinister reputation during the bubonic plague. The island became a quarantine station for ships arriving in Venice, and later a dumping ground for those afflicted by the plague. Thousands of bodies were unceremoniously dumped into mass graves. Then, in 1922, the island was repurposed as a mental hospital. And mental hospitals in the 1920s were not anything like the types of facilities that we get today. These institutions were pretty much hell on earth. It operated for several decades, with rumors circulating about questionable medical practices and mistreatment of patients. The hospital was eventually closed in 1968, and Poveglia was left abandoned, a dumping ground for bubonic plague victims and the site of a horrific mental hospital. Yeah, no wonder people think this place is still messed up. Those who have had the clearance to go to the island have reported hearing disembodied voices, screams, and footsteps echoing through the dilapidated structures. Some claim to have seen apparitions of plague victims and disturbed spirits roaming the abandoned hospital wards. Access to the island is restricted. The Italian government has prohibited public entry, and trespassers risk legal consequences, and that just makes the place more alluring, doesn't it? Number 8, Casa Dario in Venice. The Venetian Gothic Palace in Venice is one of the most haunted buildings in the city. There have been a series of misfortunes that have befallen many of its owners throughout the years. It was constructed in the 15th century, and architecturally, it's beautiful. Despite this aesthetic appeal, though, the palace has earned a dark reputation because of the series of tragedies that have plagued its owners. The belief in a curse surrounding Cadario has persisted for centuries. The first owner to fall victim to misfortune was Giovanni Dario, the original commissioner of the palace. Legend has it that he went bankrupt during the construction, leading to financial ruin. Future owners faced similar fates, with a series of bankruptcies, untimely deaths, and family tragedies. One of these former owners was Charles Briggs, an Englishman who purchased the palace in the 19th century. After acquiring Cadario, Briggs lost his wife and daughter. The next owner, a ballet dancer named Rolf von Bockelmann, also met an untimely end shortly after acquiring the property. Next on the list is the Capuchin Catacombs. The Capuchin Catacombs in Palermo, Italy, are an extensive underground burial site that houses thousands of mummies. It was built in the 16th century, initially intended for monks, clergy, and other wealthy citizens. Over time, it evolved into this unique burial ground that captured the deceased in various states of preservation. The catacombs consist of long corridors lined with shelves that hold coffins, some containing the deceased in their original clothing. The bodies are arranged in a range of poses, from standing to lying down, creating this eerie spectacle that has intrigued and disturbed visitors for centuries. The catacombs were in use until the 1920s, and the last body was added to the catacombs in 1920. No surprise here, these catacombs are often associated with tales of hauntings. The legend goes that the spirits of the deceased linger within the catacombs, and visitors have reported eerie occurrences, hearing unexplained sounds and whispers. Some have even claimed to see the eyes of the mummies move, or felt a presence guiding them through the dimly lit corridors. There are also stories about specific mummies. Take Rosalina Lombardo, for example, a young woman who appears remarkably well preserved. Some visitors claim to witness Rosalina's eyes opening. And at our number 6 spot is the Museum of Mummies. This place houses a collection of naturally mummified bodies dating back several centuries. The mummies on display were discovered in the nearby catacombs of Santa Maria, where environmental conditions had led to these bodies being exceptionally well preserved. The museum offers visitors a glimpse into the burial practices and customs of the local population from the 19th and early 20th centuries. The bodies are arranged in these open coffins. The mummification process occurred spontaneously due to the specific microclimate within the catacombs, a combination of low humidity and stable temperatures. It's gained a reputation for paranormal activity. Many visitors and locals claim to have experienced supernatural occurrences within the museum's premises. Tales of ghostly apparitions, mysterious footsteps, and unexplained sounds have all been reported. Some speculate that the unique conditions that led to the natural mummification process may have somehow preserved not only the physical bodies, but also the spiritual essence of these individuals. And at number 5 is Evil Tower. The Evil Tower at Castello de Papi in Italy is home to a haunting tale involving the vengeful spirit of Matilda. According to local legend, Matilda met a tragic fate after committing a heinous act. She took the life of her lover right after some intimacy. And that really seemed to tick people off. It was just particularly cruel. I don't think there's ever a good time necessarily to end an innocent person's life, but right after getting down with them, probably the worst timing possible. As a consequence of this gruesome crime, she was condemned to the ultimate punishment, a death sentence. The spirit of Matilda is believed to linger within the confines of the Evil Tower. The tale suggests that her restless soul haunts the grounds, trapped in a perpetual state of anguish and regret. Number 4, the Botanical Garden. The Botanical Garden in Lucca, Italy is said to be haunted by its former owner, Lucida Mansi, a noblewoman with a penchant for dark deeds. Lucida was known for a macabre practice. It's said that she would take the lives of her young lovers by leading them to a trap door equipped with sharp blades, again right after sleeping with them. Legend has it that she was desperate to retain her youthful appearance and sold her soul to the devil in exchange for an additional 30 years of beauty. This unholy pact granted her an extended period of youth but condemned her to a life steeped in malevolence. The story goes that if you visit the lake within the Botanical Garden and gaze into its waters, putting your face down, you just might witness Lucida's expression reflected back at you as if she's peering into a mirror, perpetually haunted by the consequences of her sinister choices. At third place, we have Casa del Anime. Casa del Anime, once an inn, has a grim history behind it. The establishment was once owned by a deranged family with a penchant for violence and greed. This family engaged in a horrific method of dispatching some of their more wealthy customers. In this inn, you had your standard rooms, but then there were 2 rooms that were supposedly a bit more luxurious, located at the back of the building, away from the roadside. These rooms were reserved for their more well-to-do guests. The owners seek to profit off of these people, not just by having them pay for a nicer room, but by crushing them to death as well. They would drop massive pieces of furniture onto their unsuspecting victims, crushing them to death in their sleep. After committing that gruesome act, the family would proceed to rob the deceased of their belongings before callously disposing of the bodies. The victims were cast into this large hole on the premises, transformed into a mass grave. After World War II, the inn was inhabited by a different family who soon reported unsettling experiences, claiming to hear the chilling sounds at night of echoes of enormous objects crashing to the floor and clattering of crockery. To this day, Casa del Anime is said to be haunted by the tortured spirits of those who met their tragic end within its walls. Number 2, Castello di Fenis. Castello di Fenis is a historic castle dating back to the 14th century. It was constructed by the Challant family. While the castle is open to visitors today, there are areas that remain restricted, and it's believed that these sections are teeming with the lingering spirits of past residents. Reports from those touring the castle describe unsettling occurrences. Disembodied voices are said to reverberate down the empty halls. Spectral figures dressed in medieval attire have been spotted drifting through the towers and along the battlements, only to vanish without a trace. One particularly haunting tale involves a ghostly figure associated with a man who was known to play the violin. Story goes that this musician mysteriously disappeared one day, leaving his violin case behind, and some visitors claim to hear the haunting strains of a violin playing within the castle, as if the ghostly musician continues to serenade the halls from beyond the grave. Finally, we have Villa Magnoni, said to be haunted by a witch. Villa Magnoni is an abandoned house situated in the quiet village of Cona. The windows of this eerie residence are now walled up, except for one. The place has sat abandoned for years, but one day in the late 80s, a group of young men decided to explore the abandoned house. They managed to break in, and once inside, they all started looking at each other, confused and incredibly unsettled. They were all hearing the unmistakable sound of children singing. It was coming from the garden, but when they went to look, there was nobody there. To their horror, the men looked up to discover an old woman scolding and insulting them from a floor above, cursing and yelling at them to leave. They scrambled away from the abandoned property, tearing off in their car, but not long after they'd hit the road, they were involved in a horrific car accident. 3 of them lost their lives in the crash, leaving only one survivor behind. After this incident, villagers sealed off the windows of the house, but weeks later, the covering on one particular window, the very one where the old woman had appeared, was found mysteriously uncovered.